Something extraordinary happened at a formal white-tie state banquet inside Windsor Castle. What started as a glittering diplomatic evening ended with the Princess of Wales rising from her seat, walking across the room and ordering a guest to leave. That guest was Freddy Parker Bowles. The fallout has changed the rules forever.
All right, settle in, because this one is a proper story. Not the usual palace gossip that comes and goes in a day. This is the kind of moment that quietly redraws the lines inside the monarchy.
Picture the scene. Windsor Castle, St. George's Hall. White tie, the full formal works. Foreign dignitaries, senior politicians, military leaders, the whole polished machine of a state banquet running exactly as it should. Every place setting precise, every conversation carefully managed. The security presence is heavy, as it always is when the highest levels of the royal family are in the same room with international guests. And then Freddy Parker Bowles starts drawing attention for all the wrong reasons. According to the accounts that have circulated, he was drinking, making offensive remarks directed at both guests and staff, and, most critically, recording the proceedings on his mobile phone. In a room full of high-profile diplomatic figures, that last detail lands like a stone. Mobile phones at state banquets are already tightly controlled for obvious reasons. Filming the event crosses a line that security teams treat as a genuine risk. Catherine, Princess of Wales, did something almost unheard of. She left her seat. In the middle of a formal banquet, with the eyes of the room potentially on her, she walked over and personally instructed him to leave the hall. Not a quiet word through an equerry, not a discreet message passed along the table. She handled it herself. That decision is the heart of this story. Because for years the Parker-Bowles connection has carried a certain protective layer. Camilla's family has been woven into the royal orbit for decades. There has been a long-standing tendency, going back as far as the early 1990s according to those familiar with the pattern, to manage or soft-pedal certain behaviours rather than apply the same standards that would be used with anyone else. The institution has historically preferred silence and damage control over public correction when the people involved sit close to the Queen Consort. This time, that pattern broke. After the banquet, Kensington Palace issued a new and unusually strict memorandum. The language is clear. Individuals without royal titles attending state events will now face a zero-tolerance approach. Any serious breach of protocol or security expectations will result in immediate and indefinite suspension from future invitations. No quiet second chances. No private smoothing over. The door closes. That is a significant institutional shift. It is not simply about one young man who had too much to drink and made a series of bad decisions. It is about who gets to set the tone inside the modern monarchy. Catherine's intervention, followed so quickly by a formal policy change coming out of Kensington Palace rather than Buckingham Palace, signals that the Prince and Princess of Wales are no longer content to inherit the old way of managing family complications. They are rewriting the rules in real time. Prince William's support has been unambiguous. He has made it clear that the safety of guests and the dignity of diplomatic occasions take priority over the sensitivities of extended family members. In other words, the institution comes first. Pride and long-standing personal connections come second. That is a sharper line than previous generations have always been willing to draw. Think about what this actually means in practice. State banquets are not casual dinners. They are carefully choreographed instruments of soft power and diplomacy. Every guest list is scrutinized. Every seating plan is political. The presence of someone who is filming, making offensive remarks, and visibly under the influence introduces variables that security and protocol teams cannot ignore. Catherine's decision to act on the spot rather than tolerate the situation until the evening ended sent a message that was received loud and clear inside the household.
All right, settle in, because this one is a proper story. Not the usual palace gossip that comes and goes in a day. This is the kind of moment that quietly redraws the lines inside the monarchy.
That the monarchy cannot continue to operate with two sets of standards, one for those with titles and another for those who are simply connected by marriage or blood to the inner circle. The new memorandum suggests the second view has won the argument, at least for now. There is also a larger story about Catherine's growing authority. For years she was careful, measured, almost deliberately low profile in matters of internal discipline. This episode shows a different posture. She assessed a risk, acted decisively in a high-stakes setting, and her husband backed the decision without hesitation. That combination, clear judgment plus institutional support, changes the internal balance of power. It suggests that when the next difficult situation arises involving people on the edges of the family, the response is more likely to come from Kensington Palace than from older patterns of quiet accommodation. The Parker Bowles name carries history. Camilla's path into the royal family was never simple. The family has been both protected and scrutinized in equal measure. Previous incidents, stretching back more than 3 decades according to those who follow these patterns closely, were often handled with a degree of discretion that left the underlying issues unresolved. This time the resolution was public enough and formal enough that the old approach looks finished.
What happens next will be interesting to watch. Will the zero-tolerance policy be applied evenly? Or will exceptions still creep in for certain names?
Will other extended family members take note and adjust their own behaviour at formal events? And how will this affect the wider atmosphere around the Prince and Princess of Wales as they continue to take on more of the day-to-day weight of the monarchy? These moments rarely announce themselves as turning points at the time. They look on the surface like one awkward evening that got out of hand, but the combination of Catherine's direct intervention, the formal memorandum that followed, and William's public alignment behind both creates something more durable. It is a statement about standards, about who is accountable, and about the willingness of the next generation to prioritise the institution's integrity over the comfort of long-standing personal relationships. The monarchy has always been a mixture of family and institution. The tension between those two things never disappears. What changes is which side wins when the pressure rises. On this particular night at Windsor Castle, the institution won, and the person who enforced that outcome was the Princess of Wales. That is the real story, not just that someone was asked to leave a banquet, but that the rules themselves shifted afterward, and the shift came from a place that is only growing more influential. What do you make of Catherine's decision to handle it herself rather than leave it to staff? Do you think the new zero-tolerance policy is necessary, or has the response gone too far? And how do you see this fitting into the bigger picture of William and Catherine's approach to the monarchy as they step further into the centre of it? You can feel the temperature change the moment William decided to stand fully behind what Catherine had done. This wasn't a quiet nod in private. This was the Prince of Wales making it clear that the old way of handling these situations was finished. When a member of the extended family crosses a line at a formal state banquet, drinking heavily, directing offensive remarks at both guests and staff, and recording the entire proceedings on a mobile phone, the response is no longer going to be a polite word and a closed door. The response is now removal, and then a permanent change in the rules. Let's be precise about what happened that night at Windsor Castle. It was a white-tie state banquet, the highest level of formality the monarchy still stages. Foreign guests, senior figures, the full weight of diplomatic protocol. In that environment, Freddy Parker Bowles' behaviour was not a minor social slip. Recording the event on a phone is treated as a security issue for a reason. Offensive remarks directed at staff and guests in that setting are not just bad manners, they risk the atmosphere and the dignity of the occasion itself. Catherine did not send a message through an aide. She left her seat, walked across the room, and instructed him to leave the hall. That is rare. It is deliberate. And it was the moment everything shifted. What followed is the part that matters for the long term. Kensington Palace issued a new memorandum. The language is unusually blunt. Individuals without royal titles who attend state events are now under a zero-tolerance policy. Serious breaches result in immediate and indefinite suspension from future invitations. No quiet rehabilitation, no soft landing. The door closes and stays closed. William's formal backing of that decision is what turns a single incident into institutional change. He has made it plain that the safety of the guests and the respect owed to a diplomatic occasion take priority over the pride or the connections of extended family. In other words, the monarchy as an institution comes first. The comfort of people who have long enjoyed a degree of protection because of their link to the Queen Consort comes second.
That is a significant statement. For years, there has been a recognized pattern around the Parker Bowles side of the family. Difficult behavior has often been managed rather than confronted.
The instinct has been to shield, to contain, to avoid public friction. That instinct stretched back a long way. The accounts point to episodes as early as 1990. The result was a quiet double standard. Certain names received more latitude than others would ever have been given. That latitude has now been withdrawn. When William chooses to stand publicly with Catherine's decision, he is doing more than supporting his wife. He is signalling that the next generation is prepared to enforce standards that previous generations preferred to negotiate around. The memorandum did not come from Buckingham Palace. It came from Kensington. That detail is not accidental. It shows where the operational authority on these questions is now sitting. Think about the practical effect. From this point forward, anyone without a title who is invited to a state occasion knows the rules have changed. There is no longer an assumption that family connection will soften the consequences. The security and protocol teams have clearer ground to stand on. The senior royals have drawn a brighter line between the working institution and the wider family orbit. And Catherine's willingness to act in the moment, combined with William's willingness to lock that action into formal policy, has made the new standard real. Some will say this is overdue, that the monarchy cannot function properly if it continues to absorb and quietly excuse behaviour that would not be tolerated from anyone else. Others will argue that family complications are complicated by nature and that permanent suspension is a harsh response to one evening. Both views exist. What is no longer in dispute is the direction of travel. The decision has been made, the policy is written, and William has put his authority behind it.
This is what a power shift inside the institution actually looks like. Not a dramatic announcement, not a press conference. A single clear action in a formal setting, followed by a written rule that removes the old flexibility.
And the heir to the throne standing firmly in support. The message is simple. The standards that protect the monarchy's integrity will be applied, even when the person involved is closely connected to the Queen Consort's family. The old pattern of shielding has been interrupted. Whether that interruption becomes permanent depends on whether the new memorandum is enforced the next time something similar happens. But the first move has already been made, and it was made by Catherine on the night and locked in by William afterward. That is the real story underneath the dramatic headlines. Not just that someone was asked to leave a banquet, but that the rules governing who gets to stay in the room have been rewritten, and the Prince of Wales has made sure the rewrite sticks.
What do you think this means for how the wider family will be handled going forward? Do you see this as Catherine and William finally drawing a hard line, or is it a one-off reaction that might soften with time? Let me know your thoughts.